A very good morning to one and all present here. I am Adila Mohsin and I welcome you all to yet another lecture in our NET JRF lecture series organized by the Eklavya Club of the Department of English, I.E.H.E. As our resource person for today, we have with us Miss Alina Ansari ma'am. She is, first of all, she is one of our most beloved seniors. She completed her MA from I.E.H.E itself. She cleared her NET in 2024 and she also completed a diploma in communicative English, and she's currently working as an assistant professor at the Oriental Institute of Science and Technology. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Adila, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Adila, for this wonderful introduction. So today we'll directly begin with the Canadian literature. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Canadian literature, we will be discussing about the prairies, how they used to write, about the journal writings that was prevalent at that time, and how people from different areas, they relocated and they went to Canada and they started writing over there. So beginning with Canadian literature, it was written in English or French, and it was the reflection, and it reflected on the Canadians' bilingualism, because Canada is not a place where only one kind of natives used to live. It is a place where people from different places of the world went, and they used to live there due to some or the other reasons. Sometimes the reason might be slavery, sometimes the reason might be acquisition, whatever it is, but this is how it used to be. So it was written in English or in French, and it also this reflects the Canada's bilingualism. It also reflects the Canadian perspective on nature, frontier life, and Canada's position in the world. It also reflects Canada's ethnic and cultural diversity. Earliest works were diaries, journals, and letters, because naturally when people went from other places to Canada, they used to write whatever their experiences was, or whatever they used to come across with. Fine. So they used to write about that. Then there are accounts of travels and exploration, and then reports on encounters with Innu. Innu was the tribe, basically they were the natives of Canada. So whenever someone used to go over there and they used to meet the Innus, they used to write about it, and those who used to meet them, they were known as the First Nations in Canada. Earliest poems were patriotic songs and hymns, naturally, and the first novel was The History of Emily Montague, an account of contemporary Quebec, realistically written by Frances Moore Brooke, who was also a wife of an English army chaplain. So when people used to go there on transfers or for slavery or for any other reason, they used to write their experiences over there, and that's how Canadian literature majorly started. Next we have Susanna Strickland Moody, one of the earliest immigrant prose writers, and she was the author of Roughing It in the Bush or Forest Life in Canada, which was written in 1852, and it was written to discourage prospective immigrants. She basically didn't want anybody to come to Canada. So whatever she wrote was about the negatives of that place particularly. So to speak of, a picture of immigrants who dream of a new Eden but encounter instead the realities of unpredictable native peoples, a fierce climate, unfamiliar wildlife, and physical and cultural deprivation. Then we have Margaret Atwood, who wrote about the Journal of Susanna Moody in her collection of poems, The Journals of Susanna Moody, and has powerfully reconstructed the wild landscape of colonial Canada and its relation to life. So basically, Margaret Atwood wrote about the colonial Canada, and in which she named the poetry collection as The Journals of Susanna Moody, and this was published in the year 1917. Then we have this historical romance, which was a popular genre of fiction in colonial Canada. Famous is Wakusta or The Prophecy. Wakusta was the antagonist. Written by John Richardson, and this portrays the 1763 uprising led by Pontiac chief of the Ottawa Indians at Fort Detroit. Wakusta is a native Canadian and the antagonist. Compared to the Last of the Mohicans was an American work which also showed the true prairie or the true natives and their culture and how they used to live. Similarly, Vakusta is about the natives, how they used to live and how people used to encounter the natives, the Innus. Fine. So it is compared to The Last of the Mohicans, sometimes claimed as the first Canadian novel. This is also compared and stated as the first Canadian novel. Next we have Julia Catherine Beckwith's St. Ursula's Convent or The Nun of Canada. The Nun of Canada. This is also preceded, means this is the third first novel that we have. Actually, there was no distinctive literature at that point of time, so we don't have something special or something precise to speak of. But Susanna Moody was the first one to start writing about it. Next we have Pauline Johnson. She was highly inspired by the Romantic poets, and so she wrote the poetry Flint and Feathers in 1912, and there was a poetry collection after her name in Flanders Fields 1950, and The Castle Thief, stories under the title Legends of Vancouver. She also wrote the short stories, and the title was Legends of Vancouver. Next we have E.J. Pratt. Here we have E.J. Pratt looking at us. So he was a major Canadian poet from Newfoundland. And Rachel, a sea story of Newfoundland. They usually called Canada or anywhere they used to visit and explore, they called it Newfoundland. So he wrote about this particular Newfoundland in 1917 as a long narrative poem. Recurring themes were Newfoundland, background, primitive nature, and evolutionary history. Sea and maritime life, war, Canadian history. He also won the prestigious Governor General's Prize thrice. Governor General's Prize was one of the very remarkable and important prize which the Canadians used to get or receive on the basis of their contribution for the Canada or the literature, right? Then we have this anthology. This was a collection of poetry, New Provinces, written in the year and published in the year 1936. We do not know when it was written, but it was anonymously edited by F.R. Scott. Major poets included the Montreal Group. This is important with net point of view. We need to keep this in mind. A.J.M. Smith, A.M. Klein. He was a Jewish poet. Then Leo Kennedy, F.R. Scott, and also E.J. Pratt. Next we have Hugh MacLennan, 1907 to 1909. Professor at McGill University, interest in the classics. So when you read something which is very much having a lot of impact on you, most of your writing depends on that way, and your writing is inspired with what you are reading mostly. So he used to be very interested in classics, so you can guess and have an idea of what kind of writing he must be having. His famous novels were, like, first is Two Solitudes, written in 1945, set mostly in the time of the First World War. The Precipice, 1948, The Watch That Ends the Night, 1959, set against the backdrop of the Second World War. Fascism, Spanish Civil War, and the Great Depression. Attempts to capture moral, social, and religious conflicts that affect individuals, families, and the French and English communities in Quebec. Mostly you will see Quebec because Quebec is the place where major French population used to stay. So most of the writers repeatedly mention Quebec. Either they are from Quebec or their stories are based in the land known as Quebec. Next we have Robertson Davies, very important. He wrote 3 trilogies and they all were quite famous. The first one is Deptford Trilogy. He was highly successful. The series revolves around a simple act. A young boy throws a snowball at another, but it misses its intended target, and the effect this act has on a number of characters. So every trilogy is having 3 works, 3 novels. So the first novel was Fifth Business, written in 1970, explores Jungian psychology, myth and magic, and small town culture. Next we have The Manticore, 1972, and World of Wonders, 1975. Second trilogy that we have is Cornish Trilogy, The Rebel Angels, 1981, What's Bred in the Bone, 1985, and The Lyre of Orpheus, 1988. Now, in NET, we have questions like they will tell you 4 to 5 names, and in the options there will be 4 to 5 names, and they'll give you options that which of these forms one trilogy. So all you have to do is try to remember the names according to the trilogy, so that if they'll give you these options, you can pick and choose which one lies in one particular trilogy. You can also use this information and go for the elimination method as well. The last one we have is Salterton trilogy. Next we have George Ryga. George Ryga was born in Alberta in a family of Ukrainian immigrants. See, most of them are immigrants. At age 13, his formal schooling stopped and had to do odd jobs. His play, The Ecstasy of Rita Jo, very important, 1967. George Ryga, The Ecstasy of Rita Jo. Please remember, 1967, years are important. Now we usually have the questions of chronology. You need to know the years, not only of the works, but also of the writers. They ask the birth years of writer, and they also ask you to arrange them chronologically. So you need to know that. The Ecstasy of Rita Jo, 1967, is one of the most important plays in Canadian literature. Other major plays are Grass and Wild Strawberries, Captives of a Faceless Drummer, Sunrise for Sarah, 7 Hours to Sundown, and Shadow of the Vulture. The Ecstasy of Rita Jo is a young indigenous woman who comes to the city to find freedom from the limitations of reserve life. She had a very reserved, very conservative life, and she wanted freedom. So she went out to the city, and she undergoes racism, marginalization, finally rape and murder. Rita Jo's death comes as a consequence of the imposition of a colonizing power on indigenous peoples, condemns the brutality of a system that limits, rejects, or sentences indigenous people to lives of social and spiritual poverty. That takes away their pride, their traditions, and their language. Because when they are living elsewhere, they need to acquire all the traditions, all the cultures which that particular place is having. So you somehow have to give up on your roots. Next we have Farley McGill Mowatt. Farley McGill Mowatt was born in 1921 and she died in 2014. A Canadian writer and environmentalist. Born in Belleville, Ontario, Mowatt joined the Canadian Army during World War II. He attended the University of Toronto after returning from the war. People of the Deer, very important, first book inspired by a field trip to Canadian Arctic he made while studying at the University of Toronto. Lost in the Barrens, 1956, children's book won a Governor General Award. Never Cry Wolf, fictionalized account of his experiences in the Canadian Arctic with Arctic wolves. His other works, Virunga, The Passion of Dian Fossey, biography of an American ethologist who studied gorillas and was brutally murdered in Rwanda. Because of the flourishing greenery and the vivid, fauna and flora, there were a lot of ecological associations which people used to find. So when you are an enthusiast, ecological enthusiast, you will find a connectivity and association with those particular streams and those particular topics. So you'll definitely write about that, about them. So in the United States, it was published as Women in the Mists, the story of Dian Fossey and the mountain gorillas of Africa. Autobiographical works, Owls in the Family, The Boat Who Won't Flow, and No Birds Sang. Joy Kogawa, Japanese-Canadian poet and novelist. Very important, best known for Obasan, 1981. Please remember the years. Years are very important. Other novels which she wrote were Women in the Woods, Itsuka, which is a sequel to Obasan, and The Rain Ascends. Obasan was written in 1981. It was docufiction that blends the literary, the historical, and the autobiographical. Literary, historical, and autobiographical in a retrospective narrative. Obasan means aunt. It describes the imprisonment of Japanese Canadians during the World War II. Based on her family's experiences during the war, the government confiscated their home and sent them to an internment camp. It is one of the few functional accounts of North American treatment of ethnic Japanese during this period. Usually minorities were treated very brutally and they had to suffer a lot. Next we have Mavis Leslie Gallant, born in Montreal, Quebec. Gallant worked briefly at the National Film Board of Canada before taking a job as a reporter for the Montreal Standard. Left Montreal for Paris. She began writing short stories. Soon her stories started appearing in the New Yorker. The New Yorker is an American magazine, and Madeline's birthday was the first story to appear in the New Yorker. She published 116 stories in the New Yorker throughout her career, which is a lot of stories. Next we have also some major works, novels, Green Water and Green Sky, and A Fairly Good Time. One play which this person wrote, What Is to Be Done. Short story collections, ample of them. The Other Paris, My Heart is Broken, The End of the World and Other Stories, Home Truths, In Transit and Across the Bridge are few of the important ones. This is the Governor General Award for your reference. Next we have Canadian prairie fiction. Now, prairie is depicted as a desolate landscape, inspiring ennui, or a homely locale containing more genuine folk. As for Me and My House, 1941 by Sinclair Ross is a very important work, kindly remember this. As for Me and My House by Sinclair Ross. Mrs. Bentley, a Protestant minister's wife, writes journal or diary entries for over a year. Prairie Town of Horizon, in the Prairie Town of Horizon. So this is about this. As for Me and My House, in this, Mrs. Bentley, she is a Protestant minister's wife and she writes journals or diary entries for over a year. From 8th April 1939 to 12th May 1940, Prairie Town of Horizon, set during the Great Depression in the fictional Midwestern. Other works are Who Has Seen the Wind, 1947, by W. O. Mitchell, and The Mountain in the Valley, 1952, by Ernest Buckler, set in Nova Scotia, Annapolis Valley. Margaret Lawrence, another very important writer, born in Manitoba, depicted Manitoba's largest city, Winnipeg, in her fiction. Please remember which writer is depicting which place in her fictions. Sometimes Match the Columns comes and and the jumbled cities, jumbled fictional towns are real towns which are depicted in his or her works are mentioned, and you just have to match them, arrange them. So you need to be very much aware that which work is having which place or which city as its location. Fine. Lived for a while in England and Africa. Manawaka novels, very important. Manawaka novels explored their heroines' rebellion against a constricting small-town heritage. Committed suicide at an advanced stage of cancer. Margaret Lawrence committed suicide at an advanced stage of cancer. Manawaka novels. Manawaka is a fictional Manitoba small town of the prairies. The series comprises narratives on 5 different women, all set in Manawaka. Theme of Quest for Identity, The Stone Angel, 1964, A Jest of God, 1966, The Fire Dwellers, 1969, A Bird in the House, 1970, and the last one and the important one, The Diviners. The Stone Angel. When you will read these works, you will realize that all these works, the people are trying to find their own identity, their own self. Why? Because when you are in some other culture, when you are in some other place, you in a way lose yourself. You lose your roots, lose your authenticity. So everything is somewhere lost and messed up. But we always try to come back to the origin, to the center, to the locus. So that's why these novels are sort of an exploration to the identity. The Stone Angels, written in 1964, a portrait of a remarkable character, Hagar Shipley. In novels, the names of important characters or protagonists is very, very important. a portrait of a remarkable character, Hagar Shipley, who at age 90 confronts her mortality and is terrified. All she can see behind her is a wasteland of personal failures. Yet her terror leads to a change of heart and a personal grace that marks her final days. The novel works mainly through the flashback memories of Hagar, who faces the need for a nursing home. She is not ready to succumb or die. In a skillful interweaving of past and present, the novelist offers an insightful examination of a fallen angel whose overweening pride led her into self-exile. The last one is Diviners, written in 1974. Morag Gunn is the protagonist here. You will see most of these works are having women as the protagonists. A successful 47-year-old novelist, discovery of some photos of her childhood sets off a series of recollections. Morag grows up in Manawaka, was orphaned as a child. Christy Logan and Prince raise her. Christy tells her stories of a Scottish hero, Piper Gunn. Most of them, they were having foster parents. And Morag feels embarrassed by her poverty and her life in Manawaka. She gets away to Winnipeg. The other Manawaka novels, I have given you a brief description of most of them. You may go through them. A Jest of God, 1966. The Fire Dwellers, 1969. A Bird in the House, 1970. And The Diviners. Kindly remember the names. We have very important writer here, Mordecai Richler, 1931 to 2001. He was a Jewish writer from Montreal, opposed the principles of mainstream Canadian culture, presented uncomfortable questions and often unpopular moral positions, absurdist vision of life, comic sensibility, and the apprenticeship of Judy Kravitz was most probably first work of this person. Set mostly in Montreal during the 1940s, Judy Kravitz is the anti-hero, a poor Jewish boy raised in Montreal. His desperate attempts to buy some land and become successful is mentioned here in this work. Other major works written by this writer, Barney's version, Solomon Gursky was here. Solomon Gursky was here is also very important work. St. Urban's Horseman, Son of a Smaller Hero, Joshua Then and Now, controversial non-fiction, Oh Canada, Oh Quebec, Requiem for a Divided Country, 1992, a collection of essays on nationalism and anti-Semitism. Solomon Gursky was a man and he was a prominent figure and somehow he went missing. So Mordecai Richler, he went on a spree and he started writing about this person and somehow imaginary, somehow critical, somehow investigated, somehow researched, and he managed to write a work based on this person who went missing. So Solomon Gursky was here is a very interesting work. You must go through it. Next we have Rudy Weave, writer from the minority ethnic group of the Mennonites with German ancestry. Parents had immigrated from Russia. Again, many of his novels are of epic scope. First novel, Peace Shall Destroy Many, 1962. First epic novel by this person was The Blue Mountains of China. Other important works are also mentioned over here. The Discovery of Strangers and The Scorched Wood People. Weave has also written 4 volumes of short stories. Most of the Canadian writers, if you will see, you will find that they have written short stories. Most of them. George Bovary, poet, novelist, critic, published over 40 books. Burning Water, his finest novel, which focuses on the 18th century explorer George Vancouver. Shoot, 1994, historical metafiction concerning the MacLean Gang, 19th century cowboy outlaws. So see, George Bovary used to write about the real and living people who used to go through several things, several events, and who have done something remarkable in their life, or which is of some great importance, like George Vancouver, Then we have the Maclean gang. So these things were remarkable and they were to be mentioned in the history through his literature, through his work. So here we have. Next we have Carol Shields. Best known for her novel, The Stone Diaries. The Stone Angel is very important and The Stone Diaries is very important. Stone Diaries was written in 1993. The title may have been inspired by Pat Lawther's poetry collection, A Stone Diary. Pat Lawther's poetry collection is A Stone Diary, which was written in 1977, and Carol Shields wrote The Stone Diaries. Please don't mess it up because many writers have done this, A Skylark to The Skylark, but we might get confused. So you need to be very clear with it. Then we have on Pat Lawther, Carol Shields also wrote an earlier novel, Swan, a mystery based on Lawther's murder in 1975. So she was very much inspired and she was connected and she was interested on Pat Lawther. That's why we associate the name of her first novel that she might have taken it from The Stone's Diary, 1977. Then we have she won a Governor General's Award in 1995 and a Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. The Stone Diary is 1993, the fictional autobiography of a Daisy Goodwill Flett. Please remember the names. This is a fictional autobiography, not an original biography. There was no any person known as Daisy Goodwill Flett. Fine. Next we have Margaret Atwood. We all must have read Margaret Atwood once or twice in our BA, MA. So this is important for us. Fine. We have prolific poet, novelist, critic, environmentalist, activist. Her novels were translated into many languages and several of them were adapted for screen. Surfacing, The Blind Assassin, The Robber Bride, The Handmaid's Tale, everyone must be knowing about it. Elias Grace, careful craftsmanship and precision of language can be seen in her work. Contemporary urban life and sexual politics dissected with trenchant irony. The Edible Woman was her first work. Chronology came in the last few papers. The chronology was about Margaret Atwood's work and they were all jumbled and options were given and you had to arrange them chronologically. Now if you know the first and the last work, many a times it becomes very easy for you to arrange them. So if you'll just remember that The Edible Woman in 1969 was the first work which she wrote, you will somehow be able to connect and you will be able to write or choose the right option. So, The Edible Woman 1969, Lady Oracle 1976, The Robber Bride 1993, Tales of Political Violence and Dystopia, Bodily Harm 1981, The Handmaid's Tale 1985, The Testament 2020, Oryx and Crake was science fiction 2003, The Year of Flood and Mad Adam. This is a trilogy, the Oryx and Crake trilogy, which is Oryx and Crake, then The Year of Flood and Mad Adams. Kindly remember these three works, these form in the entire trilogy, and please remember the chronology of the works in the trilogy. Because this time in the question, African works were given and African trilogy was asked that please arrange them in the chronological order according to their publication. Please remember. Fine. Then we have The Heart Goes Last, set in the historical Ontario. Places, Ontario. These novels expose the secret worlds of women and the ambiguous nature of truth and justice. Elias Gray's 1996, The Blind Assassin 2000. These two works were the winner of the Booker Prize. Michael Odanche, born in Colombo, Sri Lanka, writes postmodern fiction combining the factual and the fictional poetry and prose, preoccupation with multiculturalism, depicts the bizarre, the exaggerated and the unlikely, violence in both personal and political life, interest in the world of movies, jazz and friendship. Odanche's work has cinematic qualities in its frequent use of montage techniques and its spare dramatic dialogue. Won Governor General's Award 5 times and the Booker Orante's work gained literary reputation as a poet. He was mostly famous for his poetry, but he also wrote other works and which were quite famous. And maximum times, for like 5 is a good number. 5 times he won the Governor General's Award. So, the collected works of Billy the Kid is one of his very prominent and very important work, and an account of the factual and fictional life of the notorious outlaw. Coming Through Slaughter, another work, the story of the jazz musician Buddy Bolden. Please remember the names of the writers along with the names of the works and the names of the protagonists, because these usually come in exam. Mingle history with autobiography in self-reflexive narratives that enact the process of writing. Set in New Orleans, Louisiana, Running in the Family, 1982, autobiographical, In the Skin of a Lion, 1987, set in 1930s Toronto, explores the lives and politics of the immigrant workers who built many of the city's great edifices. The title is a line from the epic Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a very ancient work, very old work, and the title line is from this particular ancient epic. Divisadero, 2007, the story of a single father and 3 children. The Cat's Table. The Cat's Eye was written by the previous writer, and The Cat's Table is by Michael Odanche. The coming of age story by Michael, an 11-year-old boy undertaking an unaccompanied 3-week voyage in Orange, a large ship based on a journey Orange himself undertook in childhood. So it is more or less semi-autobiographical, you can say. Warlight, 2018, setting 1945, the end of World War II in London. So can you see the process? People were writing about World Wars, then World War II. Now we have come to the end of World War II. In London, 28-year-old Nathaniel narrates the story of his troubled adolescence. When he was 14, Nathaniel and his sister Rachel are left in the care of an enigmatic figure named the Moth. Their parents, having moved to Singapore for their father's job, later their mother turns out to have been a spy. So the Moth is mentioned in Warlight. And the Cinnamon Peeler, one of the many poetry collections. The Cinnamon Peeler has been asked in the previous year questions. Who wrote it? Michael Odanche. Very important work, The English Patient, 1992, received the Booker Prize, most acclaimed novel to date. Set in Tuscany, Italy, at the end of the Second World War. Made into a film of the same name in 1996, directed by Anthony Minghella. Please remember the name of the directors, because names of the directors are very important. They have been asking who directed this movie, who was the main actor, who was the main actress, and which movie was inspired with this. So please remember that you have a very clear understanding and association, and you must watch most of these movies so that you can have a connection in your mind and you can know the characters by yourself. Also, the novel will be easier for you to understand. So if there is a movie based on a particular novel, kindly watch that movie. Next we have Jan Martel, very famous for Life of Pi. Born in Salamanca, Spain. He was born when his Canadian parents, who were doing studies in Spain. His parents subsequently joined the Canadian Foreign Service. Therefore, Jan Martel was raised in Costa Rica, France, Spain, with stints in Ottawa and Ontario. After completing graduation, did several odd jobs and traveled extensively. The facts behind the Hellenistic Rocomaches, a collection of short stories. His first work was Self, written in 1996. First work was Self, written in 1996. Then his first novel, Life of Pi, it was written in 2002. Please remember the years, because they might not give you the works of one particular author. Like they might give you the works of one particular author like Michael Odanche, and they'll ask you to arrange them chronologically. Margaret Atwood and they'll ask you to arrange chronologically. No. But they might also do something like this, that they'll take Life of Pi from here, Cinnamon Peeler from Michael O'Dance, Cat's Eye or Elias Grace from Margaret Atwood, and they'll ask you to arrange them chronologically. So you must remember which writer came when and what did they write, when did they write, which were the years when they were writing. So this will help you to arrange them chronologically. There is no other easier way to learn this. You will have to understand and learn it and read it carefully so that this has a huge impact in your mind. Then we have the first novel, Life of Pi, written in 2002, won the Man Booker Prize for fiction in 2002. We Ate the Children Last, 2004, was a short story collection by him. Beatrice and Virgil, 2010. 101 Letters to a Prime Minister, 2012. Jan Martel used to own a library, a collection of books, a bookstore basically, and every day used to write a letter to the Prime Minister and mentioning about the importance of books and why one must read and why one must divulge into reading good works and how it can guide your future generations, so on and so forth. And they were a collection of 101 letters, and they were combined and this became a book later published as 101 Letters to a Prime Minister in 2012. The High Mountains of Portugal in 2016. Alice Munro. Again, very, very, very famous. You all must be knowing about this person. Has won Governor General's Prize thrice, Man Booker International Prize 2009. Man Booker International and Man Booker are two different awards. She won Man Booker International Prize in 2009 and Nobel Prize for Literature in 2013. Please remember, Nobel Prize is very important, and this time a simple question came and they were just asking you about one particular author and all the prizes were given. And just because I knew that this author won Nobel Prize, only one option had Nobel Prize in it. So please remember who all won Nobel Prize, because they are usually asked in NET and SET exams. So set a new trend in moving backward and forward in time. Most of her fictions are set in Huron County in southwestern Ontario. Huron County, Alice Munro. Depicted the domestic lives and relationships of women in Toronto, small town Ontario and British Columbia in an increasingly enigmatic style. Repeated theme, the dilemmas of a girl coming of age and coming to terms with the family and small town she grew up in. Major short story collections. First collection, Dance of the Happy Shades, 1968, a collection of 15 stories. Questions are asked that in a particular short story collection, how many stories were there? So you need to remember that in Dance of the Happy Shades, 15 short stories were there. Then in Lives of Girls and Women, 1971. Something I Have Been Meaning to Tell You, 1974, a collection of 12 short stories. Who Do You Think You Are? 1978 is a work by this person, a collection of 10 interlinked stories published outside Canada as The Beggar Maid, stories of Flo and Ross, nominated for the Booker Prize in 1980. The Progress of Love, 1986, Friend of My Youth, 1990, Open Secrets, 1994, The Love of Good Women, 1998, Too Much Happiness, 2009, and Dear Life was last published work in 2012. Again, very significant writer, Lawrence Hill, novelist, journalist, educator, and documentary writer. Hill was born in Ontario to American immigrant parents. His father was African American, his mother white. His father, Daniel Grafton Hill, was the first director of the Ontario Human Rights Commission. His mother, Donna M. Hill, was a human rights activist with the Toronto Labour Committee for Human Rights in the early 1950s. Hill earned a BA in economics from Laval University in Quebec City. He later earned an MA in writing from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. The work of his parents in the human rights movement and black history greatly influenced his work. So, because the parents were quite active and they were sort of activists, so here you can see that the work of his parents in the human rights movement and black history greatly influenced Hill's works. Poverty, racial discrimination, and multiracialism are the central issues of his works because his parents worked in black history. Some Great Thing, first novel Any Known Blood, and the Book of the Negroes. Please remember the Book of the Negroes by Lawrence Hill. Then we have literature of the First Nations. First Nations were the ones who had their first interaction, who came across the Inuits for the very first time. So the First Nation peoples are the native Canadians, including the Métis of mixed ancestry and the Inuits, earlier called Eskimos. We all know that Eskimos live in igloos and they used to live in very cold places. So the interesting fact is that Indians are very strong and they're very, they have a lot of passion and they have a lot of aspirations. So what happens that there are winter grapes which are found over there and they're very cold. And these people who live in Canada, they can't really move out in winter because it snows and it's very cold over there. So these Indians and all the Punjabis, they go over there and they get the grapes and they make the wine and they make a lot of money out of it because they are the only strong ones who can go over there and get those grapes. So First Nation literature is rooted in the oral tradition of storytelling and includes traditional narratives such as myths, legends, fairy tales, animal stories, and fables. Because of white contact, a purely aboriginal tradition of native narrative is difficult to trace. Maria Campbell, Métis writer, playwright, filmmaker, her memoir Half-Bred, very important, Maria Campbell wrote Half-Bred, published in 1973, widely taught in schools across Canada and continues to inspire generations of Indigenous people. Books for Children, People of the Buffalo, 1975, and Rails People, 1978. These works depict physical and spiritual aspects of traditional life in the prairies, preserve elements of their heritage for Métis children. Usually with the time and with the advancement, so many cultural traditions and values are getting eliminated from a daily life. So just to preserve them in the form of a book or a heritage, they are writing all these works, and this work is dedicated for Métis children. Then we have Thomas King. He was a novelist, short story writer, essayist, screenwriter, photographer. He was born in Roseville, California. His mother was Greek and father was a Cherokee. King failed in his first year of university and took a series of jobs in the following years. He worked with US Navy for a while and went on to work as an ambulance driver, bank teller, and photojournalist in New Zealand and Australia. He wrote many works which are inspired with all these jobs which he has ever done. Next we have Janet Armstrong, Okanaga writer, educator, activist. Her novel Slash 1985 is very important. It's considered the first novel by a First Nations woman in Canada. So Slash is important because Janet Armstrong wrote it and this was the first novel by a First Nations woman in Canada. Beatrice Cullen, Métis author, raised in a foster home like her brother and two sisters were due to their parents' alcoholism. Both sisters committed suicide. Beatrice Cullen turned to writing for emotional release, best known for In Search of April Raintree, 1983. So you need to simply remember the names of the important works like Beatrice Cullen, In Search of April Raintree, 1983. Janet Armstrong, Slash, 1985, first novel by First Nations women in Canada. Diasporic writers in Canada, The Problem of Canadian Identity, Heterogeneity, about what the immigrant writers write. Father said if he continues to write about such things, he will become popular because I am sure they are interested there in reading about life through the eyes of an immigrant. It provides a different viewpoint The only danger is if he changes and becomes so much like them that he will write like one of them and lose the important difference. Rohinton Mistry said that in his work Swimming Lessons. Bharati Mukherjee, Indian-born American professor, novelist, essayist, short story writer. You must have read her in, I think, your BA or MA years. Married to author Clark Place. The Tiger's Daughter, 1971, was her first novel. The story revolves around Tara, who was raised in Calcutta, educated in New York, and married to an American. The novel explores her cultural shock when she travels back to India, intertwined with the political situation in Calcutta and West Bengal. So when you're living elsewhere, you try to understand and admire the beauty and the culture and the systematic things, the politics which goes on there. So you get adapted to that place. Now when you come back, you realize that in your area or in your place, some things are not as they are in the foreign countries or as they are in other places. So you get disturbed somehow, and this work deals with that. Next we have Pipe, 1975, a story of Dimple Das Gupta. Please remember the names. Then we have Jasmine, 1989, the story of Jasmine, a young Indian woman who tries to adopt the American way of life. Then we have The Holder of the World. This is the retelling of Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, which was published in 1850. The novel includes time travel via virtual reality set in 20th century Boston. Also refers to Thomas Pynchon's novel V. Thomas Pynchon wrote V. Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote The Scarlet Letter, and Bharati Mukherjee wrote The Holder of the World. We have Leave It to Me, 1997, draws upon the myth of Hindu goddess Durga. Desirable Daughters, the Tree Bride is its sequel. Miss New India, Days and Nights in Calcutta, Darkness, and The Middleman and Other Stories. The Middleman and Other Stories is a short story collection published in 1988. Please remember, you might be asked to arrange them chronologically. M.G. Vasanji. He was an Indo-Canadian writer born in Kenya. Please remember where these writers were born. This is important. They might simply ask you that M.G. Vasanji belongs to which place. So it is Kenya. Recently an MP said the question was Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a writer from, and the right answer was Kenya. So you need to remember where they were born. So Indo-Canadian writer was born in Kenya. Novels discuss the life of East African Indians. First novel, The Gunny Sack, won Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 1990. The first writer to win Commonwealth Writers' Prize so far. No New Land, 1991. The Book of Secrets, 1994. The In-Between World of Vikram Lal, 2003, When She Was Queen, 2006. The Assassin's Song, 2007, A Place Within, Rediscovering India, 2009, Travelogue. The Magic of Saida, Whom Was Kyriakou, 2014, is a short story collection, and Nostalgia, last noted work, 2016. Rohinton Mistry. He was a Parsi Indian-Canadian novelist, short story writer, born in Bombay. Brother, Cyrus Mistry, is a playwright and author. After emigrating to Canada, worked in a bank. Tales from Firozshah Bagh is very important. Written in 1987, 11 short stories, all set within one apartment complex in modern-day Mumbai. You can remember the year of Tales from Firozshah Bagh by 1, then 987, because they come consecutively one after the other. 11 short stories, all set within one apartment complex in modern-day Mumbai. These interrelated stories combine the immediacy of daily life in Bombay with the experience of immigrating to Canada. This volume contains the famous story Swimming Lessons. Swimming Lessons was very important. Other works such as Long Journey, 1991, A Fine Balance, 1975. In A Fine Balance, he talks about emergency and Indira Gandhi. Family Matters, 2002. Swimming Lessons was a short story collection. Searching for Stevenson and The Scream are other major works by this person. Shani Montour, Trinidadian Canadian multimedia artist and writer. Ceres blooms at night, Valmiki's daughter, moving forward sideways like a crab. These are some important works by Shahani Motu. Thank you. I hope you liked it. And I hope that it's quite clear for you all.